This is Studio 809.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast. I'm your host, Hiking Bob Falcone, and you can find me and anything you want to know about me and what I'm doing or where I'm going or whatever. Social media, all that kind of stuff you can find on my website, hikingbob.com. You can also drop me an email if you have a topic you'd like to hear us discuss here on the podcast or have a guest you'd like us to have on the podcast. Feel free to drop us an email. We're always looking for interesting topics and interesting interviews. So we're always happy to have that. And whenever, just go there and drop me a line. Also subscribe to my newsletter. Since my column isn't running at the Independent for the time being, my newsletters are getting longer and longer, becoming more like blogs. So
Okay.
So check those out and subscribe. I send it once a week. Doesn't cost you anything, but check out my newsletter at hikingbob.com. Everything is going to be right there. Today with me, as you heard, is my co-host, Kevin Wild Westendorf.
Hey everyone, Kevin Wild Westendorf here, and you can find me on social media, primarily Facebook and Instagram at Wild Westendorf, and on my website, which is www.wildwestendorf.com. That's a lot of W's.
It's almost an alliteration there. www.wildwestendorf. It's all there. Kevin, I just want to do a quick follow-up on our podcast last week where we talked about crime in the parks and a lot of associated things like that. But one of the things we talked about was my experience in having a long response time with the police department here in Colorado Springs after calling 911. There's been another incident that occurred in town. I don't want to get into all the details because it's not an outdoor related topic, but there was another incident that occurred in town with a very tragic ending. And there's allegations that the police department took more than an hour to respond to this 911 call, which, trust me, was much more serious than what I called 911 about. And there's concern about there's a problem with the police department calling 911. In light of that, Pam Zubek, one of the reporters at the Colorado Springs Independent, who did a story on this other incident and is aware of the incident that I had, is asking for people who may have had other similar experiences with calling 911 for something serious and having them take a long time to respond. I'm not taking any sides on this. I've made my opinion pretty clear on what I thought of the incident that I called. I get that a lot of people call 911 for things that don't need a 911 response, that are not really emergencies, and that happens a lot. And as somebody who was a dispatcher previously, including with El Paso County Sheriff's Office and back east before I moved out here, I can tell you people call 911 for things that are not 911 emergencies. But the professionals who take those calls are there to differentiate and prioritize the ones that really are a 911 call emergency and those that are not. So if you have had a similar experience, drop me a line and I will put you in contact with her and or forward your email to her or whatever, and you can share your experience with them. The goal here is to make the system better. Obviously, there's a problem with the system if 911 calls, especially involving violent incidents, go unanswered for an hour. Not unanswered, but unresponded to in an hour, or something like what I had, which was not quite that level, but definitely deserved a response time that was shorter than 5 hours.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the goal here. So if you've had a similar experience where you called 911 in Colorado Springs for a true emergency, be honest now, if it's not really a true emergency, you're going to get a slow response time, and had a long response time, drop me a line and I'll put you in touch with her, and hopefully we can work together and make this situation a whole lot better. So fingers crossed. Kevin, speaking of government operations, we swore in a new mayor on Tuesday. Mayor Yemi Mobiladi was elected as a new mayor. I had a chance to speak with him in person for just a few minutes at an event last week, and thought he was a very engaging person and very easy to talk with and chat with, and seemed to be pretty engaged with the community. And I have reached out to his people to have him on the podcast, and I think we're working on making that happen sometime this summer, I guess is what I'll say. He has like 100 media requests waiting for him.
I'm sure, yeah.
And I told him I understand that, and get to me when you can. But it sounds like he is interested in doing the podcast, and hopefully we will have him on here. And one of the questions I want to ask him about is his thoughts on the park system and parks funding, and making sure we have adequate funding for our parks and trails, and rangers and maintenance and all that kind of good stuff. So it'll be hot on my list. And for those people listening, in the event that this does happen, and I don't have any guarantees yet, but there is an interest there. If you have a topic you'd like me to ask him a question about related to parks and recreation, and open spaces, things like that, let's keep it on topic for this podcast. Drop me a line and let me know what the question is, and I will see if I could work it in there. Kevin, what are your thoughts? Got a new mayor. Things should be interesting. I think we had 8 years, I think, of a pretty decently run city, and now it's time to turn over the reins. So what do you think?
I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what he brings to the table. I would like to learn more about his plans for the outdoor recreation scene here in the Springs, especially because Southers, I felt, was very, very successful with the few tax raises and proposals in the past that passed on the ballot. So I'd be curious to know how his messaging is going to be, how he plans to really convince the voters, because I feel like we've made a lot of progress in terms of the attitude against taxes is much better now, or it's much more of a progressive attitude now, because we are a city known to be like completely averse to taxes of any kind. And I think Southers was great about his messaging and explaining how important it is to fund the outdoors here, and that includes a bunch of ballots that passed that went to infrastructure and all that too, and because that the infrastructure here does impact the outdoors, and I think it's really, really important to keep that in mind too. I wouldn't say I have any hard-hitting questions for him, but I would like to hear him have a discussion, a conversation that goes a lot deeper than just generic, like, we're a world-class city for the outdoors and I'm going to keep it that way. Like no, I want to know what your plans are.
Yeah, to be fair, the previous administration, you mentioned some tax stuff. They didn't raise any taxes, increase any taxes, anything for outdoor, but they did. And and I'm sure I'm getting to what you were trying to get at, was that there were, with Colorado's specific tax laws, there were tax excesses that would either have to be refunded to the citizens or used for something else. And the mayor did ask several times for them to be kept and used for parks infrastructure, and that is what happened there. The only tax increase we had was for road work, road improvements, and those are temporary, and it got renewed, and they do have a sunset on them. But the good thing is that you're right. When there was extra money, they did pour it in there, and the previous mayor and the incoming mayor both seem to have recognized that parks and trails are not a side business, I guess, for lack of a better word, that they are critical. They're actually critical infrastructure, like roads and bridges are, that they need to be properly built and maintained and all that kind of stuff, because that's why people come here. That's why tourists come here and pour billions of dollars into the economy. And that's why many people like you and I and so many other people live here, because of the outdoor opportunity. So both of them have recognized that the outdoor recreation and our parks and trails are an actual infrastructure, not just we'll do without it if we have to type of a thing. They have their place in the pecking order, obviously, but I think that by looking at them as critical infrastructure, they both recognize that they're going to be, or I should say, we're hoping, those of us in the outdoor community are hoping that they're adequately funded going forward. And I feel kind of good about it, but it's day one of a new administration.
Why hasn't he done more?
The one thing he did tell me when we had our very brief conversation was he has to keep reminding himself he doesn't have to do everything in 30 days. And I said, that's probably a pretty good philosophy to adopt. You can certainly set the tone, but you don't have to get everything done in the first month. But, like you said, he's got 4 years to work on things, and that's what we'll see what happens there. It's an interesting time for us. And he's a trendsetter in many ways. He's the third elected strong mayor, and that was a change that was made some years ago with our charter in Colorado Springs. He's the first immigrant, naturalized immigrant elected as mayor in Colorado Springs, the first African American elected as mayor as Colorado Springs. We had an African American mayor many years ago, I would say about 20 plus years ago, but that was not a strong mayor, and he was selected by city council to fill in a gap when another mayor had left office. So it definitely, I'm not diminishing either person as their mayor, but this is just a lot of trend setting going on here. It's an interesting community, and I'm not going to dwell on the tax thing. We've become a city that's not too adverse to taxes, but definitely very still cautious with it. So blanket tax increases are never going to be a thing here that people are going to vote for. But when you ask for them for very specific things, like we'd like to keep this extra $3 million we have to put towards these specific projects, whether they be a road paving project or a stormwater project or a new, repairing trails in the parks, people seem to be okay with that when you're very specific about what you want to do with it. And that's a good sign. That's a good thing that people will vote for it if you can justify it very clearly, and also if you can, then they watch you, because if you put that on the ballot that way, you pretty much have to do it. And if you don't, then the next time around, you're not going to get it. So it's obviously in the government's best interest to do exactly as they say they're going to do. And so far, the past 8 years, they certainly have done that. So I don't see any reason why the next 4 years won't be the same. But talk to me in 4 years. Let me know how it went.
And I do believe with Yemi's experience in terms of being a business owner, an owner of several here in the Springs that are popular and do really, really well, I think he knows how to deliver the messaging to get the point made of how it's really, really important, and then be aware of how to say it or discuss it in a way that doesn't sound like it's just a blanket tax increase.
Right. So anyway, I guess enough of the politics. We try to stay out of politics on this, unless it's directly related to outdoor recreation. But I guess you can argue that a new mayor is definitely something outdoor recreation related. And, we'll see what happens. Kevin, talking about our parks and trails, obviously, as you're well aware of, they run a lot on volunteer work.
Yep.
And the volunteer corps in Colorado in general, but in the Pikes Peak region, is unbelievable. The number of people who volunteer to work at the Pioneers Museum, to go out on trails and do trail work. There was a big boulder, for example, that came down on the Bar Trail after one of our recent snowstorms. Right. Somebody plotted that, by the way. That thing was bouncing down for a while before it landed where it did on the trail. The Friends of the Peak have just done a phenomenal job of going up there and rerouting and trying to get that thing out of the way and fixing where it went through fences and trails and stuff like that. Completely volunteer work. Our friends at Focus on the Forest up in Woodland Park do a tremendous amount of work doing cleanup work with the Forest Service in the Pike National Forest. And they've helped haul away tons of trash that people leave behind. We can talk about why people leave their garbage behind, but that's a topic for another day. You did hear me discuss that with the Forest Service in past episodes, but they've done a tremendous amount of work getting rid of all the garbage that's up in our national forest that people with poor manners leave behind. So this area thrives on volunteer work. I'm a volunteer. I was fortunate enough to be selected as Volunteer of the Year for 2022 by the Colorado Springs Parks Department. And
congratulations.
Well, thank you. But, I was, to be honest with you, anybody who had been nominated would have been a great selection. So I'm honored to be selected. But my bigger point is that there are so many people who volunteer. And last week we mentioned, and I'll mention it again, we're looking for volunteer trail ambassadors at Cheyenne Mountain State Park. And I'll include a link again in the show notes like I did last week, and also in the newsletter if you're interested in being a trail ambassador, which is a program that I head up over there and help to create. We're looking for trail ambassadors there, but they're looking for people all over the place. One of the places, Kevin, and I got an email from the Guard of the Gods Visitor Center. You would think that at the Guard of the Gods Visitor Center, they'd have people just dying to volunteer over there.
Oh, yeah.
And they are, to be honest with you, but they still need more help. So, the Guard of the Gods is a beautiful place, and to keep it running and helping millions of annual visitors, millions of annual visitors. They have the same experience. It's a lot of effort between the city, the Guard of the Gods Foundation, which actually runs the visitor center, and the volunteers. They're looking for volunteers. They usually, what they start off doing is working like about 3 hours on a one day at the information desk at the visitor center. And I would tell you, they are well trained too. You can go in there and ask them about trails, about animals, about wildflowers, about whatever. They're really good at doing it. You could also take people on nature walks and help with school programs. Anyway, they're looking for volunteers. So if you want to be a volunteer, I'm going to give you an email address here real quick, but I will also have the information in the show notes. But the person you want to contact is Brett Tennis. He's the Park Operations Administrator, and his email address is Brett, BRET.tennis, like the game, at coloradosprings.gov. Drop him a line if you'd like to volunteer at the Guard of the Gods. And I would tell you, I know people who volunteer. They're phenomenal volunteers there. There are also a bazillion other volunteer opportunities out there. If you'd like more information on that, you can also drop me a line. I'll put you in contact with somebody about where you might want to volunteer, whether you want to do trail work, whether you want to man a visitor's desk, whether you want to be a camp host at one of our state park campgrounds, anything like that. There's a lot of opportunities out there. And any one of these park managers or system managers or anything like that will tell you that they could not operate without the volunteers. Or if they did operate without volunteers, they'd have to hire a boatload of people, which would greatly increase cost. And nobody wants to see that happen either. They find a balancing act. You know, you need some people to be on staff to be around all the time, but you need your volunteers to fill in the blanks. So feel free to do that. Kevin, you've done some volunteer work out there. I know that.
Oh, yep. And it's not like just grueling hard work. I mean, it is hard work, but every time I've been a volunteer on a trail building or trail cleanup day, everyone's there for the same reason, and it's just fun. I mean, it's a lot of fun. It's a great chance to get to know people and make friends, because I mean, you're up on a trail for hours, and so you're gonna talk to people. I've made a lot of great connections and experiences, and not outdoor related, but I work with a bunch of volunteers at my job every day. And most people, I mean, sometimes the teenagers that are dragged along are kind of not in the best mood. But everyone else, though, just they're excited to be there. They're all there for one reason, and we couldn't get the work done that we do if we didn't have them. And the same goes for our parks and trails.
Yep, it's what makes this city tick. And plus, we have an unbelievable number of nonprofits based in Colorado Springs. It seems to be like the nonprofit hub for not just parks and recreational. That seems to be the majority of them, but there are also so many other nonprofits that are looking for volunteers, such as the one you work for at Care and Share, and so many other places that do a lot of great work in the community. So if you want to be a volunteer, you certainly can do it. And I love being out there as a trail ambassador and chatting with people and finding out where they're from and what they're doing and answering questions. And maybe if I have a historical bit of knowledge that I could share with them, I love doing that too. So it is a whole lot of fun. Well, there are things you can do like cutting down trees with one of our Timber Tiger teams that work in Cheyenne Mountain State Park or something like that. That a little removed from the public, but still a very rewarding experience. Kevin, the other thing we talked about last week, much to our consternation, was people doing dumb things with wildlife.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it happened again. There was a picture that was posted, I think, at USA Today. It was actually a short video. And USA Today kind of upset me because they said this daring woman had a picture, took a selfie with next to a sleeping bison or a resting bison. And I said, well, daring is not the word I would use. Idiotic would be the word I should use. She's literally standing next to this humongous bison, the size of an SUV, who was obviously resting only because he probably got tired of chasing around the last idiot who got too close to him and taking a picture. It's like, it's getting annoying for me, and it probably shouldn't, but it is. But it's annoying for me to see people doing this kind of thing. And then there was another incident in Yellowstone. That incident happened in Yellowstone. Another one happened in Yellowstone. I don't know if Yellowstone have an idiot magnet on it that just attracts all the idiots or what.
Yeah.
But somebody was driving down a road, saw a baby elk on the side of the road, picks up the elk, puts it in their car, and drives it to the police station.
Why do people do that? Oh,
because they're stupid. There's no other word
Yeah.
for it. There are so many signs, and you can't even say that people don't know. There are so many signs telling you to stay away from the animals. You can't go past. You can't get anywhere without seeing one that says stay away from the animals. And they pick up this elk and they bring it to the police station. Of course, the police are like, "What do you want us to do with this thing?" The elk runs off. Who knows what's going to happen to this elk? Is it old enough to know how to eat on its own? It's separated
Oh,
from its
yeah.
herd. And a lot of times, like happened with this one bison we talked about previously, was that those people pushed this bison out of a creek because they thought it was stuck, and then the bison was shunned by its herd.
Yep.
So it wasn't going to get support. They had to put the poor thing down. Who knows what's going to happen with this elk? And now it's out there someplace nobody even knows where it's at. So it is just, there's a National Park Service put out a long thing about people messing with animals and tell them to leave it alone. And they have a sign that says, "Don't pet the big furry things," and it has a drawing of a bison booting somebody in the butt and kicking them booting them a long way. Maybe that needs to happen more often. I don't know what to do. It is just incredibly. It's disappointing. It's annoying. It's aggravating. And, I guess people think they're doing the right thing, but you're not. It just, please stop doing this stupid stuff with these poor animals. Leave them alone. They do more harm than good. That's the hard part to tell people. They are doing more harm than good. They're doing no good and doing all harm when they interact in close proximity or pick up an animal, for crying out loud. They're doing no good and 100% harm when they do this kind of stuff.
And what's really frustrating is I know this might sound cold, but this is nature. If you see an animal that does look sick, like, of course, call the Parks and Wildlife, if you're really concerned, because they're the experts in this. But also, that's just nature. Sometimes the animals are going to get hurt, injured, or sick. Because I've seen some messed up deer on the trails, and it's clear a lot of times they either got attacked by something else or got hit by a car, and like there's a recent one that I saw deer where it's clear it broke its leg and it didn't heal the best way, and yeah, it's sad. It sucks to see that, but that's a part of nature.
And wildlife people will tell you that when you see something like that, they're probably not going to intervene because nature needs to run its course.
Yeah.
And they can't go out there. And if they see, and again, without getting too graphic here, but if an animal gets hit by a car and is lying on a highway and is obviously, seriously wounded or injured and probably not going to make it, the police may go or wildlife people may go and euthanize it right there on the scene. But for the most part, if an animal is, like you said, you saw a deer and it's kind of limping around and having an issue because it got attacked by an animal, they're just going to let that do its thing. So, these things happen. But it's important for nature to just run its course. So if some deer and you think, oh, that poor animal, I should pick it up and take it somewhere. No, these things need to run their course. Now, if you're concerned, like you said, Kevin, call the officials. I guess you could start with the police department. They could refer you to the right place, not 911. They will probably come out and investigate and determine what to do. But for the most part, nature just needs to run its course. Here's the other thing with Yellowstone that a lot of people may not be aware of. The bison that are in Yellowstone are not allowed, and by some law, to go outside of Yellowstone National Park. And it's something to do with disease and brucellosis, which is a disease in bison and other animals of that side, like cattle. And any bison that gets out of Yellowstone has to be euthanized, has to be put down. So if you are interfering with an animal, think, well, they'll just take them someplace. No. If you interfere with the wildlife up there, and like a bison, and it has to, it can't live there, they can't take it anywhere. They can't bring it to a ranch. They can't bring it to a farm. They can't do anything like that. They can't bring it to a zoo. That animal has to be put down, which is a tremendous waste. So this is why it's important for people to just leave the big furry things alone, for crying out loud.
And especially around here, there's been a few times where I've seen a resting baby deer, a fawn, and it's curled up. It's super cute looking, and you don't see the mom anywhere. That's normal. It's totally normal for the mother deer to leave the fawn in a kind of a nesting area, takes off, does its deer thing, and then it comes back. But there's every year I'm seeing local stories of people on the trails or in the parks in the city where they see a sleeping fawn and then they freak out and think, oh no, it's gonna get hurt and stuff. And then that causes the fawn to get rejected by his mother.
Right. And then they end up getting put down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just not good. So anyway, leave the big furry things alone, for crying out loud. You're not doing any good. Kevin, the weather, always a topic here.
Yeah.
I have a friend who's hiking in Seattle. She tells me she's had clear blue skies for the past 4 days. And we've had almost, it seems like nonstop rain.
Yeah.
And it's just, come on already. Now, to be fair, the ground is very moist. And it's interesting, I should say, I went hiking Monday up in Black Forest Regional Park. It had been raining all day. It finally broke. Cole and I were both at our wits' ends. So I said, let's go for a hike. And it really wasn't muddy. Soft, but really no mud to be seen. So it's soaking in. And we haven't had torrential downpours. It just rains and rains and rains. But it's raining, so it's soaking in, which is good for two things. We don't end up with muddy trails, and it actually benefits. It doesn't run off and doesn't benefit anything. It's actually benefiting the foliage out there, the plants and trees and things like that. But on Tuesday I went out for a hike up in the Mueller State Park looking for wildflowers, which by the way are insane this year. And
I bet.
the thing to remember is these rainstorms frequently come with thunder and lightning. And it was funny, I was headed out of the loop I did, 3-ish miles, I think it was. And heading out of the loop I did, and you could hear thunder and it, close by. Didn't see any lightning, and people are walking down the trail. And I'm trying to get out as fast as I can. Of course, I'm carrying camera gear and stuff that, that I want to protect. And I get that, you could probably be equipped to walk in the rain. That's fine. You wear a rain jacket. But if it's thunder and lightning, that's a different thing altogether. And by the time I got back to my Jeep and got in it, probably I was still sitting in the parking lot at the trailhead, getting my stuff together. There was lightning coming down all over the place. I mean, it was close. It was bright. The thunder was loud. And I'm thinking, those people heard the thunder when they were walking down there. Why are they still doing that? I'm not going to say anything to them. They look like adults. Presumably knew what they were doing. They accept their own risks. But hey, when these storms happen, they frequently come with thunder and lightning. It is dangerous out there. So just be aware of that. And the saying is, when thunder roars, get indoors. That's not to be taken lightly. People get killed every year, including here in Colorado, getting struck by lightning. A couple people got hit last week at a golf course here in town. So I think they did okay. But for crying out loud, pay attention to the weather and don't get yourself in any hot water.
Yeah, the only thing that's probably the most frustrating about the rain is the fact that it's warm out now, so I want to go out and do these day-long hikes you all know I love to do. But also my job is largely outside based, so there's been a bunch of times like rain or shine, I'm out there to get food to those who need it, but I have had to cancel a few of my markets early or close them early because the lightning will get really intense and it's everywhere, and I'm next to a big giant metal truck, and so I don't want to get hit.
Yeah.
So that's always a bit of a bummer, and it's a safety thing, so I'm allowed to do it. Yeah, just last couple days the markets I've had, it's been like during the break in the day where it's dry, which has been really, really nice. Yeah, it's just not fun getting rained on. I mean, I've got an umbrella and stuff and a raincoat, but when the winds are really high and it's raining sideways, that is not fun.
Yeah, I get some people enjoy being out in the rain. For me, it's just not enjoyable. I'm equipped for it. I've hiked in the rain plenty. If it's raining, I have a rain cover for all my packs, so I can cover up my gear and my packs. Then I got a rain gear with me all the time. And it's not that I'm not equipped for it. I'm going to get drenched or anything like that. It's just that to me, it's just not enjoyable. And of course, when it's lightning out, it's just not safe.
Yeah.
I would much rather hike on a nice, bright, beautiful robin's egg blue sky day than one where it's raining all the time. That's just me. If you like it in the rain, that's good. But pay attention to the thunder and lightning and that kind of stuff. Kevin, I just want to throw something out here real quick in regards to the what I mentioned at the beginning about if you had an incident with 911 in Colorado Springs, took a long time for a police response. I did just hear from Pam Zubek. She says people can just email her directly if they have any incidents. So you don't have to go through me. If you've had a case where you called 911, it took a long time for the police to respond. Her email address is Zubek, that's ZUBECK @CSindy.com. And you can just email her directly, and I will put that link in there that if you've had a situation similar to what I had and what happened here in town over last week, feel free to just drop her a line directly and tell her your story and see what happens next. Again, the goal here, in my opinion, my personal goal would be just to make the system better. Kevin, one more thing too. I got the wildflower photography class coming up this weekend, this Saturday at Guard of the Gods. So if you want to know my secrets about how to take great wildflower pictures, you can do that. There'll be a link in the show notes. There was a link in last week's newsletter also. And you can also read previous newsletters by going to my website. So if you missed one, you can go there and look at the archive of previous newsletters too, so you can pick up on that. Kevin, you got anything else?
No, I think I'm good.
All right, Kevin, well, thank you for being on. We did this on Zoom because Kevin's going in one direction and I'm going in another. And thanks to the technology of Zoom, we were able to get this done. And we help support the Zoom costs by our Patreon subscribers. So if you want to help support this, you can do that at Patreon, patreon.com/hikingbob. And with that, I think we'll say goodbye.
All right, we'll talk to you later.
All right, everybody, thanks for listening to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast.
Before you go, did you know you can rate and review our Studio 809 podcasts? That will help us because our egos really need to have thousands and thousands of listeners. But that helps our wonderful sponsors reach more ears too. And we do love our sponsors. So just go to Studio 809 or any individual 809 podcast in your iTunes or podcast app and click on ratings and reviews. Thanks.